like to welcome everyone to this month's episode of Repairer's Realm. This week we're going to be speaking on the importance of some of the OEM glass and dispelling some of the myths around glass in general. We're getting all kinds of questions on that from the industry and different conversations we're having. So we thought this would be a great topic to bring the OEMs on and get their perspective and kind of some of the reasons behind some of these different requirements that are out there. So I am Scott Van Hooley with the Repairability Technical Support Team here at ICAR. And just want to remind everyone that if you have any questions throughout this broadcast, you can go up in the right-hand corner and go to the tab and submit those questions live. If you're watching this on demand, you can send those questions into repairersrealm@i-car.com. And Scott, introduction?
Afternoon, everybody. Scott Caboose. I am a subject matter expert here at ICAR. I am also the OEM technical lead. So I work with a lot of the OEMs and try to make sure that ICAR is bringing you the content that they want delivered to you. We were looking earlier at some of the position statements that the OEMs have come out with over the last 4 or 5 years, basically, on OEM glass. And this has really come up because of the ADAS, because of the technology behind the windshield. And most of the manufacturers are very consistent. They say it a little different, but they're pretty consistent in what they want done. They're telling us that we need to use OEM glass anytime there's technology behind that windshield. And we've got some great industry experts with us today from Ford, GM, and Stellantis. And it's going to be a lot of fun kind of picking their brain and understanding this subject matter at that level.
All right, and so with that, we'll have each of the OEMs give a brief introduction, and Tim, we'll start with you.
Yes, hello, and thank you. My name is Tim Sitterlet. I'm with Carlex Glass. We are a manufacturer and the distributor of the Ford Lincoln automotive glass. Thank you for having me.
All right, Paul?
Yes. Thanks for having me. Yep, my name's Paul Vertolka. I work on the body collision advanced service team. Basically what that entails is I work internally and directly with Stellantis Engineering to develop early service strategies as well as support the certified network and service shops across North America.
All right. And Lynn?
Hi, Lynn Rogers here. Happy to be here today and discuss OE glass. I'm the body collision lead for Stellantis, and Paul and I work together and do a lot of assessments on vehicles and the entirety of the unit itself, as well as author procedures. So we're both pleased to be here today.
All right,
Bob.
And I'm Bob Gallagher. I'm with General Motors After Sales. I'm a product manager for collision parts. Super happy to be here with you guys, with you folks today. Look forward to it.
Great, guys. Thank you very much for joining us. I'm really looking forward to this. So we've seen these position statements popping up over the last 4 or 5 years. Why OEM glass? What's the big deal?
Yeah, I think I'll start off with that one. Well, glass has certainly evolved technologically over the years. No longer does it just keep out the rain and the bugs. OEM parts are designed and engineered, manufactured and tested to the highest quality and government standards. In fact, original equipment parts must also meet additional federal motor vehicle safety standards. So today's original equipment glass, they're performance parts for the vehicle. They enhance your driving experience, your comfort levels, and can increase the safe levels of operation when combined with the advanced driver assist features.
Great, thank you, Tim. Paul and Lynn, either one of you guys got comment there?
Yeah, I'd like to add to that a little bit. I think exactly hit it right, Tim. And I think in addition to that, there's consistent manufacturing tolerances that really control the quality. So, the development of glass, it's not just in a vacuum. You're working with other facets of the industry to make this glass work the way that it should along with the other components. So for instance, the optical quality requirements for cameras in particular are specific to each program and agreed upon between the OEM and the camera manufacturers. So they work together to make sure that the owner of the vehicle does have the peak performance when OE glass is used.
I'd like to build on that too, and echo what Tim and Lynn had indicated there. But the OE standards for distortion, right? They're more stringent than that we test to the tri certification, right? Because we sell our glass in other countries, so we try to we certify our glass to U.S. as well as Chinese and European standards, right? So the standards for optical clarity, I believe, are increased for our parts and the OE parts in general. And I'll add that there's only one part that's tested, right, for front side rollover test with the vehicle testing as we bring a vehicle to market, and that's the OE part.
Great, thank you, Bob.
All right, so let's just touch on a little bit for any, what kind of information does the OEM pass on to the aftermarket, that might be proprietary for the glass standards around that optical clarity and things like that for the aftermarket?
Yeah, it's a good question. As far as the proprietary aspects of the part, you're talking about the shape of the part and all of its components, okay? So as far as that goes, many of the parts, if not all of them, are protected by patents. So the answer is no. That information is just that, is proprietary, and it is not shared.
So to build on that too, so the aftermarket can obviously reverse engineer as they do for many collision parts, but they won't get the details, right, that go into to making up the complex nature of today's fixed glass.
Paul and Lynn, you got anything on that?
Yeah, again, I think that idea of proprietary information and optical quality and so forth, OEM windshields, they use certain processing, definitely development and engineering that are specific for so many different things, and with regard to rollover and testing and things with that are all internal. That information is all internal information with regard to how that glass interacts with the body of that particular vehicle. So it'd be pretty hard to have anyone outside the organization have that information.
Great, thank you guys. So I still hear shops and other people on the street just saying, glass is glass. So what unique characteristics does that OEM piece of glass have?
Yep. If you could share that first image that we provided, you'll see examples of a F-150 windshield that meets specs, and the specs are measured by color. The green is where the spec has been met across the surface of the part. And you can see in aftermarket alternatives, whether they're an OE equivalent manufacturer or merely a part that's been reverse engineered. This is typical of any OEM part measured against any aftermarket part that has been reverse engineered. Again, because the OEM part is built to the CAD data, the exact specifications of the part. So I like to tell people that, a wise man once said that while we all like to get a good deal, we don't always know what we're getting. And in this case, when we are utilizing an aftermarket part, because the OEM part goes well beyond the logo or the nameplate on the part. For me, one of the most important features of the glass is its fit and optical quality. Most windshields have complex shapes from both side to side and top to bottom. So think in terms of a proprietary shape built from the original design data. And again, that's not reverse engineered from an OEM part. these images, for me, tell a great story. The distortion can be seen. This can impact the proper performance of the wipers. And if you look, some of the distortion can actually be found in the camera viewing area. So just the simple fact that the glass has to be, built to that original CAD data to perform properly. In addition, the components and attachments like the brackets, the pins, the spacers, these are also important for an OEM part when it goes in the opening, that it be positioned properly. And the OEM parts will come with those pins and spacers on them, whereas some aftermarket parts do not.
Yeah, I'd like to go off that. You brought up our heat or our position statement. There's a couple specifics on there as well. So I'm going to read from that. Glass coatings provide UV protection and in-cabin heat reduction. Aftermarket variants often may not be equipped with reflective technology. This technology may be as granular as air conditioning performance and fuel economy. The attached moldings have been validated with exposure testing, including UV, chemical temperature, tear, and abrasion resistance. Glass may be equipped with enhanced acoustic dampening technologies integrated into the glass. Aftermarket glass may not be equipped with this variant, which may result in increased wind, road, and engine noise. And then I know we're going to go into the ADAS, but I can't stress enough how much how important that is with the technology for the OEM glass to the aftermarket glass when it comes to ADAS, in the forward-facing camera, heads-up display.
Yeah, we'll definitely talk more about that later. Tim, did you have anything to add on the characteristics? Bob?
The addition regarding the OEM parts themselves?
Yeah.
Yeah, nothing more than, with the points I was making earlier, as far as all of the components that go into the part, the pins, the spacers, the brackets, these are all the original design specs. He touched on a good point as far as, the acoustic capabilities and, the different vinyls that are used for the acoustic applications, for the HUD applications, the fact that the cameras are working in conjunction with the glass, the projectors for the HUD applications. They're meeting very tight specs and tolerances. And they're just hard to duplicate when you're reverse engineering a part.
Absolutely. How about you, Bob?
Thank you. If I, to plus that up, we're all moving to more complex glass, right? As there's more requirements on fixed glass, right, to interact with the safety systems, to improve an occupant's safety by actively applying the brakes or maybe notifying you that you're drifting out of your lane, right? So we rely on solar absorbing glass, right? And it's a specific solar absorbing, right? Because these multifunction sensors, they don't like heat, right? The displays, the cameras, none of them like heat. So we've got to have the right tint in our windshields in order to not only protect precious components, but to also interact with perform in low light conditions, right? So that's light sensitive cameras that may need to detect a red light versus a red lamp on a motorcycle, right? To dim automatic headlamps, automatic headlights, right? That's another key feature that you, if you don't have the part, if you're not using the OE part, you may not get all the benefits of the feature.
So let's just spend a little bit more time on the safety systems. I think the big thing with glass is it's kind of one of those things that have been overlooked for years. There are so many shops that they were doing things like painting the flange after replacing an A-pillar, and we haven't been able to do that in a very, very long time, certainly longer than I've been in the industry, and yet we still get questions on it through Ask iCar, where people are questioning why they can't paint the flange on it when they're replacing a windshield. And it's like, well, let me take you back about 50 years. And now we have all the ADAS technology that's really kind of brought it back to the forefront. And there's just so many different things that we really need to be thinking about. What are some of the things that you're seeing with the ADAS system, like for negative effects when you're not using that OEM glass?
Negative effects of I mean, we've all got horror stories, right? Of warranty repairs that couldn't be repaired without the first issue was the fact that it was an aftermarket glass, right? So once the ARG glass was replaced with an OE part, then obviously we were able to calibrate systems, right, and provide full functionality.
Tim,
Yeah,
Paul, Lynn?
just to add to that, there was a report by SBD Automotive that indicated that 92.7% of the vehicles available in the U.S. since May of 2018 had an ADAS feature on them. So it's a technology that continues to grow. I mean, we're seeing it widespread across the vehicles and all the different features. And one of the challenges of ADAS is all the different OEMs are using different terminology for the features. So the commonality of the terms is maybe a concern for the industry. But ADAS is something that the technicians just need to embrace and be further trained so that they can return the vehicles in a safe working order. And many retail glass shops today have not gone through the necessary training or invested in the new calibration equipment that's needed. So as a result, they may source it out to a third party who specializes in it, or take it to a dealer to have the work done. So it's just a risk that for the original installer, but they need to know that they're still responsible for that work that they're completed. So just highlighting that.
Yeah, and I think to add to that too, OE glass, the specifications and the repeatability of the quality and how close the tolerances are required. Things as simple as a bracket, the camera bracket being out of position just by a little bit, just 1/10 of a degree, could affect the operation with regard to ADAS. So something as simple as that, the way it was manufactured, could have some really negative effects as well.
Certainly, the bracket tolerance and the positioning of the glass. I know in the assembly plants, it's just so critical because of the robotic installations that those parts just have to be pristine for correct operation. And we bring that to the aftermarket, and it's just not always understood or appreciated.
I was talking to an engineer yesterday, and he was talking about the horizon, right? If some aftermarket windshields that are installed improperly may also prevent completion of the learn of the windshield, or the horizon may be cut off, right? So that you don't have all your features, or as I mentioned earlier, you may get the false readings, right? Which is obviously a scary path to go down.
One of the other things too is that the thicknesses of the glass vary based on model sometimes, and so that could have an effect with regard to aftermarket glass if it was the same thickness for that particular model, if whether theirs are all their thicknesses match what the OE was per model even, and so that could also be a characteristic that they could play some importance.
So when we look at the advancements in automotive glass, it looks like ADAS is kind of a line in the sand. When we put that camera behind the glass, it's kind of the world changed. Can you walk us through what that meant for you as a company, as a manufacturer, and what did you have to do as far as training, education, and just making sure that everything was done properly when it got into the field, into the repairers?
Yeah,
That's a really
real quick. Oh, sorry, Tim. I was going to go a quick personal story. I know we see this all the time in shops and customer, but we do want customer satisfaction. So something we have seen is, if it's not the OEM glass, if it's the aftermarket glass, personally speaking, a friend of mine had an aftermarket glass put in, and he complained about it and said that it's not working. ADAS features, lane assist, all that. And sure enough, they had to put the OE glass back in just because the tolerances aren't there, in the glass to the camera, to the ADAS. And that is something that is engineered and tested. It's not just put our glass in. It is engineered to specs.
Tim, did you have something to add?
Yeah, I was just going to add that we've made extensive efforts to try and communicate to retail glass shops about the importance of ADAS recalibration. We've shared links to Rotunda, who offers the OEM VCM equipment for recalibrating the Ford Lincoln vehicles, aligning with the Ford licensed software for a proper recalibration. And we've been putting this communication out for years and years to the point where, talking to people, they didn't even know calibration was required. So that's how far back we were helping put the word out there. But I would add that, a proper installation is paramount. And one of the images I'd like you to pull up is number 9 that references the enrollment into the Ford Certified Glass program. The windshield is a structural element of the vehicle. And in an accident, the airbags are designed to deploy off the windshield. If it's not properly bonded in the opening, can cause further damage to both the vehicle and increase risk of injury for the driver and its occupants. So for these reasons, Carlex, we support both the Ford Certified Glass network of installers as well as AGSC, the Certified Glass Shop Technicians. The Auto Glass Safety Council is made up of industry experts aligned to address procedures and education and product performance for motor vehicles within the guidelines of the Federal Motor Vehicle Safety Standards. So Ford Certified Glass Network has adopted the AGSC certification and the use of OE glass and OE recalibration tools and software to develop a nationwide network of glass shops. So it's all about proper and safe installations.
Great, thank you, Tim. So you guys have all mentioned HUD in one way or another. If our viewers aren't familiar, heads-up display is what we're talking about there. How does the glass affect that as well?
Obviously, the windshield, again, is working in conjunction with the projector, right? The windshield is made up of a wedge-shaped vinyl. It's a special vinyl to help realign the projected images in the windshield so that they are a singular, undistorted image for the driver. And in some cases, there may not even be an aftermarket alternative, but if the aftermarket part does not incorporate that wedge-shaped premium vinyl, if you will, you're going to be left with a funhouse-like image.
Not very fun, though.
Not so much.
No, it's a term that we call ghosting, second imaging. And yeah, as Tim said, the level of ghosting is controlled by the surface quality of the inner structure of the glass and that wedge angle.
Let's just spend a little bit of time talking about proper installation. It's something that the industry has been, obviously been doing for a long time, and I think there's still a lot of, people that don't understand the importance of the windshield. Just let's talk a little bit about some of that proper installation and how important that is.
If the glass is not installed in the correct location, maybe a few millimeters too low in the opening, that the camera horizon may be cut off, which will reduce feature effectiveness, right? Or may eliminate features altogether, or even worse, provide false readings, right? If you're riding down the road and the brakes automatically apply and there's for no reason, that could be catastrophic, right? So a proper installation is key, and that's why our parts are designed specifically purpose built for the vehicle that they are assigned usage to.
Yeah, and I think also to add to for the safety aspect is to follow the manufacturer's directions with regard to times when it comes to the curing of those materials. I think it's very, very critical as well. So I think that's something that shops need to be cognizant of when that glass is being replaced. That it's delivered with that particular material that bonds, that urethane, and it's in that cured state.
And then, what is the importance of the frit, guys? And could there be a problem with an aftermarket frit not being the same as an OEM? And what considerations or problems would that lead to?
Yeah, the frit is obviously an important component of the glass. An OEM part, it's silk screened on there, the proper paint pattern, if you will. It's designed obviously to block the ultraviolet light from damaging the urethane that is bonding the glass to the opening. If the frit layer is too thin, or just improperly applied, that UV will damage the bond and cause a failure down the road. So it is a critical aspect of the windshield.
Anyone else have a comment on the frit?
Yeah, from our engineering team, that echoed exactly what Tim said. Basically, it was absolutely critical with regard to the bonding, and so certainly that I think is across all OEs and the importance of the quality of that particular material.
Great. So I've got one question here. My former employer, I worked for a manufacturer before, and we noticed a correlation between camera overheating failures and aftermarket glass, where we could almost predict when we had a camera failure due to overheating that it had a aftermarket glass in front of it. And have you guys seen any problems like that or concerns like that? We noticed it mostly on the warranty side, where somebody wanted this camera replaced under warranty, and it came in, and we're like, boy, it's got an aftermarket windshield in front of it. Is that our responsibility or not? And first, I'd like to know if you've seen anything like that with your brands at all, and if you have any insight into what might cause something like that, that'd be great.
Yeah, so I reached out to our engineer and asked that question, and one of the things that they mentioned was that there are different thermal properties of glass construction, and so, for instance, the polyvinyl butyrol that actually composition in between the glass, that material, the glass composition itself, may allow more or less infrared or heat transmission, and so that could reflect and that internally could increase the amount of heat inside. So those tolerances are very, very closely followed when they develop and construct that glass, as well as shape control in that camera region, and that could also create kind of a lens effect that could concentrate the incoming light on the camera unit. So yeah, they are very cognizant of that. Not sure if they've actually seen a failure or one that may have been attributed to glass construction, but certainly they're aware of it.
To build on that, I mentioned earlier that all of our complex glass has solar absorbing properties, right? Because as I mentioned, none of these multifunction sensors or cameras or displays like heat, right? So I can see how that could be a problem if the aftermarket part didn't have the correct solar absorbing capability that the original part had on it. So yeah, it's key to use the OE part in these types of repairs, especially with complex glass.
Yeah, I would just echo what both Bob and Lynn are saying, that the optical qualities of the glass, when in doubt, put in the OEM part. With the technological advances today, these kind of issues are surfacing. We're not necessarily aware of them until it's too late, until after it's happened. But As far as the composition of the glass, the daylight transmission qualities, that could be met through a colored vinyl or a colored glass, but the combinations may be enough to throw the working conditions of the system off and lead to the overheating. I personally have not run into the overheating issue, but I trust that it certainly has happened out there. I would emphasize, the bracket plays such a key component in the fit back with the camera itself from the windshield, and then it just goes back to the positioning and everything we've discussed already. So again, when in doubt, mitigate your risk and put in the OEM part.
Great, thank you guys.
So looks like that's kind of all the planned discussion that we had, but we do have a question or two coming in. Just want to remind everyone, up in that right-hand corner, there's a question tabs. You can submit it live or after the fact on demand at repairsrealm@i-car.com, and we'll get those questions answered as they come in. The first one I think we want to touch base on is we recently have seen ADAS camera replacement become more prevalent, even when the OEM glass is installed. So I think they're kind of looking at, is there something that's being done to identify if it's a defect in the glass, or is an issue with the camera, or is it maybe something where the shop is maybe thinking it's a problem when it's not? It may be a calibration. Anything you're seeing around any of that kind of issues out there with the shops?
Yeah, I guess I'll go first, guys. There's the occasional failure that does occur. Just make sure that you're using an OEM tool with the licensed software designed for that vehicle. Okay, we're not in the field with you when the fail occurs. We've seen failures, but it's difficult to prove without being on site, on hand, to determine exactly what the error code was and the actual cause. But I just keep going back to, again, mitigating your risk with the OEM part. Your chances of it failing have been reduced dramatically when you use the OEM part.
All right. Well, and I think one thing just from my own experience, when I was in the shops, a lot of times we were at a dealership, they would send over a vehicle and it says it needs a BCM. And the mechanics would take the vehicle, and every time it was a broken wire. And so when I hear something like that, could there be a problem with maybe the camera was damaged in a way they didn't realize? It may not look physically damaged, but are there other, possibly mitigating factors that it's a broken wire or another module because it's on the CAN bus system that might actually be the problem? So even if you're replacing that camera module, that might not ultimately fix the vehicle because you really have to diagnose it. And to your point, if you're not using a scan tool that's capable of doing that diagnostics, it's not just pulling codes. You actually have to go through that troubleshooting tree and do the flow chart to understand what actually needs to be replaced, especially when it comes to anything on the CAN bus.
We identified another problem too where shops came to us and said, hey, we've got an error code on the camera. It says we need to replace it. And we tracked it down and tried to find the root cause. And we finally identified that they were using a particular aftermarket tool, and that tool had the incorrect procedure in it. And they're actually trying to put this car into a static aiming mode, and the car was designed in the US market for dynamic only. And there was enough software there that would go into that mode, but it would just go into a continuous loop and basically lock up the camera. And it would fry the camera. You had to replace it. There was no way around it. But it was a tooling problem. So there's lots of problems that can cause camera failure. And it is a component of a car. It's an electrical component, so there is some internal fail rate, I'm sure. But there's also other things that go into that. One other question we've got here, could you guys give us some insight into the heating elements that are built into the forward-facing cameras?
Don't have anything on that.
Okay.
Heating elements.
Just the fact that they're there. I mean, obviously, to eliminate any moisture or any frost buildup that could cause the camera to pick up something, through the opening. I'm not sure the context of the question.
Yeah, that's all I've got. Sorry. Here's an
heating
interesting.
elements. I don't know if you're referring to, like you said, Scott, about the cameras overheating, or if it's some sort of, the camera itself being heated.
Yeah, I think it's the heater element in
on
there
the
that's for
windshield.
the anti-fog and.
Yeah. Okay. I don't have anything specific on that. I do know that, they are engineered to sustain that.
Okay. And then here's an interesting question that I haven't thought about. Could the baking process, when we bake a refinished product in a curing oven, have any effect on the camera? Since these ovens are 130 to 150 or more degrees, could that cause damage to a camera?
I would say no, right? Because these vehicles are tested, right, to conditions that exceed that out in Arizona heat, right? Arizona desert heat. I think that these admittedly, if that was a problem, we'd have seen it. I think we'd have all seen or heard about it, right? Because so many of these cars are put in spray booths, right, on a daily basis, and refinished, and yeah.
Right. The extreme heat can, of course, damage the vinyl within the glass itself, right? I've seen instances where they've done a repair, heat lamp was used to cure the paint or primer, and bubbles emerged on the glass as a result of the heat coming in contact too close to the vinyl.
Okay. Great, thank you guys. You want to take that one?
Yeah, so one of the next ones that came in, they're basically asking for Stellantis in particular, but quarter glass being one-time use, what's some of the reasons behind that? They're thinking that it's just an alignment pin, and is that a really big issue for you guys with the one-time use parts? Is there any kind of reason behind that?
That could be related to a modular glass, and so that could be part of that reason.
Yeah. Do they have a vehicle? Maybe type in what they're referring to exactly.
In particular on Jeeps, but they're not specifying which one. Just like the quarter glass on Jeeps. I think a lot of times everyone assumes it's just an alignment pin, but in some cases it may not be. And they're just asking why they're one-time use.
Yeah, some of our glass is encapsulated, so removing it will damage the glass only on particular areas. So it's going to be the quarter glass, sometimes the liftgate glass, it will get damaged. So it is a one-time use. It's on a very specific vehicle only, not across the board.
And then another question just came in. Aftermarket window tinting, how does that affect the forward-facing cameras?
I haven't heard anything from the field, honestly. I know we don't test against that, so I couldn't answer that. I would have to say wait and see what customers come back with if they've done it and it doesn't function properly, but I can't answer that from a testing standpoint.
Normally, go ahead, Tim.
I was just going to say that I would avoid the camera viewing area at all costs. You don't want to do anything that's going to impede that performance. I've heard something as simple as putting a moisture barrier of sorts, any kind of coating onto the glass in front of the camera viewing area should be avoided.
Yeah, I think normally when they put window tints on the front windshield, they go around the camera opening, right, and they bury the edge within the cover plate. So I don't think that they intrude on the camera. That's not to say that in the future, when we have multiple cameras in the vehicle, that the window tinting may become a problem, right?
Right.
Sure.
I would be more concerned with the state and local ordinances that are in play for daylight transmittance.
Next question that we had came in was who develops a procedure process for proper replacement? The manufacturer or adhesive manufacturer?
At General Motors, we develop our own repair installation procedures for each new model. Obviously, much of it's carryover where we can from previous models. But to that point, though, when we're using aftermarket adhesives, we certainly rely on their recommendations for cure times and for pretty much ours for application, but them for cure times and drive away times.
Yeah, I would echo that same thing too. Our engineering, they definitely develop the procedures in-house, but if there's aftermarket or other components that are adhesives and things like that, they would follow their recommendations based on testing. So,
Well, and I think that kind of goes to the point that any windshield urethane meets the federal standard, and so anything within that, and if there's one has a certain epoxy primer, it's just like painting the vehicle. You have to stay within the product line. That's always something to kind of keep in mind when you're looking at replacing windshields. I know some of the OEMs will have their own specific brand they want you to use. That's a recommended brand that they've tested. And you know that there are different companies out there that are going to probably use some different adhesives, but you always have to kind of look at, okay, if there's a problem with it down the road, who's going to be the one that warranties it and things like that for proper installation. And I think that's a really important thing to make sure everybody understands.
Yeah, to your point, real quick, we have on Service Library, we do have our approved materials list from Stellantis, so that is something that you can find in our Service Library.
Okay. Well,
And
looks
similarly,
like...
Ford.
Okay, go
I
ahead.
was just going to say Ford has the workshop manuals for the installations, and a lot of information can be found out on FordCrashParts.com.
Okay. Well, it looks like that's all the questions we have right now. I'd like to thank all of you guys for joining us today and talking about this, I think, much overlooked subject that the industry really needs to know more about.
We appreciate it. Thank you.
thanks
Thanks
you.
for having us.
Yeah, good to be here.
Thanks, guys. Have a great week.
All right,
Take
take
care.
care.
You as
Bye.
well.